Hello, I'm Elaine Stevens, and I want to welcome you to Art Beat. Hello and welcome to Art Beat. I am your host, Elaine Stevens. Art Beat goes just about anywhere like a fine wine. We travel very well, and I promised you an array of artists. Today you're certainly going to get a different one. His name is Paul Dillon. When you walk into Paul's home, you see a variety of different magazines and books on photography. So stay tuned for the photography of Paul Dillon. Welcome back to Art Beat. I am your host, Elaine Stevens, and today we're interviewing Paul Dillon, who's a photo artist. Paul and I met at IP a few years back, and I was just amazed at the work that you had shown me. Then you sort of kind of sneaked it into my office that afternoon. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we did a little benefit for Diamonds for Dogs,
That's
Cares
right.
for Cats. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And you saw some of the, then you got to see some of the other things I did. So
Not only did I get to see some, but he actually gave me some beautiful art that is hanging in my home. And I noticed a couple of different types of things that you do here that are similar to what I have at home, but you've really branched out. Do tell us how you've expanded.
I try to, I'm exploring all genres of the photographic field. You know, you have so many different things that you can look at, from scenics to macro photography, and you know, all these portraits, and you know, what's new, what's old. You can just go back and forth, black and white with color. There's so much.
That's one of my favorite techniques, is the black and white with color.
Yeah, and I like doing that, and that's a fun one.
So what is macro? I noticed that you had that on one of the books there. That
macro photography is close-up photography. You can get close enough to something to see something you cannot see with your naked eye.
Really?
Yes.
Like the leaf, like the raindrops on a leaf, for example.
Absolutely, yes.
Because you have a shot of that on the wall here, as I noticed. But now I also see that, I mean, it's so unusual for an artist, period, whatever medium they're using, to branch out as much in subject matter as you have. But you've done musical artists. Eugene Esch, who's one of our signature performers at IP and Unplugged.
Absolutely.
You know, then I see nature shots as well.
Oh, well, you can't, living down here, you cannot neglect the nature shots. I mean, they're here, you know, and it's a beautiful place, so you have to go out and get those shots.
So do you have a favorite subject matter that you like to do?
Right now, I like scenics, but I'm starting to really study the portrait style, you know, more than the stand there and take your picture type thing. It's more like a lifestyle photography of a family or something like that. You know, not the child posing for the photo, but maybe playing, or even maybe throwing a little fit and crying, you know, getting those kind of unusual shots, you know, that show some emotion, or of whatever emotion it can be. Catch those special moments right there.
So like Leibowitz or some of the famous photographers of our day. So do you have an inspiration in that regard? I
do. And the thing is, my children. I wish that I was a little bit more into the photography. I have a photo that I took of my own daughter throwing a fit at a water fountain when she was about 4. Well, she's 22 now. But I wish I would, you know, back then digital wasn't like it is now, and you know, back then I couldn't afford even, you know, to do darkroom stuff and things like that. But I did get the shot of her, and every time we see that photo, we laugh. Even though it's not some kind of artistic beauty, it's just that we saw her throwing her little fit there at the water fountain.
Well, you know, I don't think that true art relies on the type of equipment you use, although you use some magnificent equipment. But you must have had an eye for that way back then, even when you couldn't afford it, and you were enjoying it.
Well, you know, I took art in school. I studied music theory. I was a musician at one point. You know, I played guitar. I played brass instruments. And, you know, I always had this creative thing
Yeah.
somewhere. And then I had a military career where my creativity was molding people, you know, making people leaders and things like that. That's
So you
what
were in
I
the Air
did.
Force for...
I was in the Air Force for 20 years. I'm retired 2005, not too long ago.
Not
so
too long.
I got to go to a lot of fun places.
But so I think by working with people in the military, you see them, when you see them through the lens, you see more than just their face.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's a character in there.
Yeah, you capture their spirit. Well, I noticed on the coffee table that you had an unusual book. Unlike some of the others, you have Mr. Dali, Salvador Dali, of course, and some of his influences. Now, has he been an influence in some of your photography?
One of the main reasons I have this, and my wife also loves art, and I bought this for her, he has a fascination with clocks.
Yeah, and we hear a
So
cuckoo.
do I.
And we hear a cuckoo clock in the background. Fancy that.
You know, there's two clocks right
see
next
that.
to each other nearly over there, and there's one in every room. You know, and they're not
Fascination.
digital clocks, you know.
Now, most people
So-
like you are trying to get away from time, and here you're surrounded by
I
it.
am, you know, so, you know, that, and, you know, he's very original, and, you know.
And he
I
does
even look
have a
at-
lot to do with clocks in here.
Yeah,
I noticed.
I mean, I even look at Art Deco and things like that, so I've got a little bit of knowledge about, like, wow, how did they come up with this thing, you know, and I want to try to be that, emulate that a little bit.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back, and Phil's going to do a beautiful little expose of some of your photography for everybody to see.
All right, great.
We'll be right back right after this. We'd like to welcome you back to Art Beat, and what you're looking at is a picture of Paul Dillon's daughter. We couldn't find the one that you talked about with the water fountain, but tell us about this one. It's really beautiful.
Well, that's Bailey. She, at about, she was about 20 months old.
Wow.
Standing in the window waiting for her mother to come back from the store. And, you know,
You captured
"Where's
that,
Mama?"
though. That it
And
truly
she
says that.
got up in the windowsill, and I just grabbed, now this was taken like 20 some odd years ago,
Right.
a plain old Kodak camera that had black and white film in it, and snapped the shot.
So the talent was there.
Well, yeah, I knew a little bit about composing and, you know, what looked good and what didn't, you know.
Yeah, well, we were at commercial break. The two men, Phil and Paul, were talking about photography and their equipment and how it really doesn't really matter if the photographer has a good camera or a bad camera. It's about the talent and the eye for the subject matter. And speaking of which, show us some of the work that you do with that camera. I mean,
This camera is, you know, they call it a entry-level DSLR, but it's like an upper entry-level DSLR. It's got good megapixels. This one, it can actually do video like some of the old, or what's coming out now is everybody gets these little Canon Power Shots or Nikon, you know, point and shoot cameras.
Yeah, right.
And they do, you know, they do a little film. So this one will actually do a film.
no kidding. So you
Yes,
and Phil could actually collaborate.
I could film with this camera, but this camera, you know, is an astounding. There's so many settings on it for you can set your flash to, you know, first curtain, second curtain, which just means, you know, just that your flash will be at the end of the exposure, the beginning of the exposure, things like that. And you know, this Canon equipment, which I have two of these. I have the prior version of this. Is also an outstanding camera, just for the ease of operation. There's plenty of megapixels. You don't need a 30 megapixel camera unless you're making a billboard, okay?
Right,
Which,
something
you know,
that is,
you're right. You know, if you're going to make a 30 by 40 photograph, these are going to do it for you.
Right.
You know?
So now the one behind us, these are lenses.
These
mostly.
are lenses. Right here I have a 55 to 250 millimeter zoom lens. This right here is a wide angle, 10 to 22 millimeter. It's real good for the sunsets and the scenics. This is just a regular 18 to 55 millimeter Canon lens. You know, they have these all have autofocus and stabilize image. You know, if you're hand holding your camera, there's no way you can really hold it still as
Completely
you could
still,
without
right.
a tripod like
Right.
he's using. But there's little stabilizing device in there that helps. You know, if there's a little bit of movement, the camera can
hold it
cover.
steady.
And this is a 400 millimeter.
Okay, what are you looking at with that one, Paul?
I'm trying to find. I got some great shots of some woodpeckers and things while I was out at Hiller Park not too long ago with this. And this thing, I cannot hold my camera steady. It has to be on a tripod or something because this is
Very heavy.
heavy.
Can I hold it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big boy.
Yes.
Well, this should
It
do
goes
some
a
really
ways.
beautiful photography.
Oh,
are you
yeah.
pleased with the results?
Absolutely. I just need to get out somewhere where I can get more, you know, subjects. You know, I want to go out to like a Pascagoula River and things like that, and I can get out there and get some really good things.
Well, let's get it soon, shall we?
Yes.
I know we're suffering with the oil crisis, but you know that someone like you will see beyond that. Someone that has that eye will see beyond that. For example, on the wall, I'm looking straight at that truck that looks like it's probably a vintage truck dating back maybe to the 40s.
Yes.
Now tell us about the color in that truck.
That truck,
What is the
the
technique?
redder, you know, in a regular photograph it looked pretty good, but I looked at it and I saw all that green, and I said this would look good high dynamic range.
Okay, now
which
what does
is
that mean exactly?
It means you take 3 to 5 different exposures of a photo of a scene without changing your composition, but you expose at those different levels, each one a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. You're able to combine them in Photoshop and put them together, and you get this range of contrast and color that is like, right now it's the big thing.
It's beautiful.
It's a
I mean,
big thing. When you see
vivid.
it in magazines, you'll recognize it now. You'll know what it is.
I was drawn to that immediately. I mean, the colors are
dynamic
so,
range.
they are high dynamic. Now that has a Dali-esque feel about it with the color to me.
Yes.
It's somewhat of an abstract look about it.
And then someone described, I put it on Flickr sometimes, you know, just to get other photographers' opinions. And he told me it was one of my friends told me it was very painterly.
Painterly.
Yes.
It is painterly.
And I said, okay, that's a new word. But, you know, people like that kind of thing.
Well, now, did you study this technique at all? This particular technique and other techniques and photography? Or are you studying now?
I have, since I got the camera, my first one, Christmas '07, I have been absorbed. I think I'm subscribed to probably 10 periodicals on
I see that
photography.
everywhere around here.
I buy books.
Yeah.
I buy books about Photoshop. All the techniques and things are explained in some of these magazines, but you know, you never really know anything till you try it.
You have to try it.
You have to try it to get it.
So you're a hands-on type of guy.
Yeah, I'll learn. I'll teach myself if I have to.
Well, obviously you have, and what we're going to do is we're going to come back with more Art Beat right after this message and look at a phenomenal piece of work that Paul did with flowers. So stay with us. We'll be right back. The one on the wall with the colors on it. You're watching Art Beat, and you're looking at Stevie, Wonder Dog.
Yes, Stevie Ray.
Stevie Ray, and he's actually blind. These are the photographs of Paul Dillon, and we're featuring him on Art Beat this week. Thank you, Paul. And obviously, you know, my love for animals. I'll have to take this home with me. But it was a gift to your wife, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I have hundreds of photos of him. And
well, the animal shots that you've taken on the wall and everything are just magnificent. But I promised you a look at something a little unusual, and this is the work of Paul Dillon with a singular flower, is it not?
it's one flower.
Okay.
And I chose this flower in particular because it does have a little defect. It's not perfect. So you can see that this is exactly the same flower. I mean, some short petals here.
Now, we call that macro photography, is it?
It is a
because
form. It's not super
dew.
close, but it's you know, it's macro in the sense that you're very close and you're getting, you know, you can see the detail, the centers of the flowers.
Okay, so like explain the process of this particular work from beginning to this.
Well, this photograph was taken of a bouquet. I don't know, my wife Tammy, she loves daisies, so we took it and I found a daisy in a bouquet of flowers and shot it. Mm-hmm. Well, I took the background, I took all the other color out of it, made the shading in here. This is in Photoshop, by the way. And then I decided to change the color of the center and outsides of the petals. And you know, it didn't happen like that, but I switched around, tried a few things, and I came out with that. I have 4 different colors. I had like 6 or 7, but these were the 4 best. And I made the photo to show what you can do with a little bit of, you know, thought and knowledge
and a
of the
sense
program.
of color, a
Right.
very strong sense of color.
You know, that is something unheard of right there.
It really is. And I mean, I don't know if you can capture the texture of this, but it really almost looks like a painting. And we were at the gallery the other night in Ocean Springs, Rodney LaFontaine's gallery, and we were looking at paintings that look like photography. And this is photography that actually looks like a painting. So how did you decide to do it with the 4 blocks, and what was implemented that way?
Well, the photograph, I had them all separate, and I also could put them all together as one photo.
Right.
And I bought them. I decided to send them to a place called MPix, which does like standouts and gallery wraps and things, which I plan on doing with some of these others. But I bought 4 of them, not knowing how my wife would want to arrange them, so I made them 4 separate. Well, she decided she liked them all together. So now they're bunched all together. It looks like, you know, but still, it looks good like that, I do believe. I mean.
So you started, as you had stated earlier, in 2007 you bought your first really nice camera. Now, it's only been 3 years.
Oh.
It's only been 3 years, and look at what you've achieved. How does that feel?
Well, it feels pretty good. You know, I always, when I first started, I was looking at this, hey, does this look any good? I would ask friends, hey, is this any, you know, I'd send them a JPEG, you know, a digital version of the photo. Oh, what do you think of this? And then I discovered, you know, Flickr, which is a photo site that's worldwide. I mean, and I get opinions, started getting opinions from people from other countries, people close by. There's a Mississippi Gulf Coast group there. And, you know, there's some good photographers there, too. And, yeah, that's outstanding. How did you do that? You know.
So they're asking your advice now.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'm asking, well, how'd you get that light? You know, and sometimes they figure out, well, how did you do this? You know.
Well, you know, in that light, in that vein, with social media and digital photography, do you feel like you missed out on the other kind of photography? Because everything is digital now. Do you feel like maybe there was something
I'm studying photography with New York Institute of Photography.
Wow. Okay.
With a correspondence and online. And they have assignments that you do, but they're teaching us film also.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, I've learned what is on the film, what makes it change colors, you know, why it does, and how to develop it, you know. And
so they're still utilizing that to some degree.
And those to know those things helps you in the process, even in digital, because you know, when you get into your digital darkroom, there's things you can do a lot faster, you know, like flipping a photo. You can just press a button and flip it, you know. If you want someone facing you this way, flip it around, they'll be facing this way, click a button. But, you know, back in the days well, they're still doing it. People still love to shoot film. I mean, some people won't never give it up. It's a little bit more difficult. They have to reshoot take a photo of the photo and then flip it. You know, it's a little complicated, but it's not a press of a button.
No, it's like in our industry with analog and digital editing, you know, but now it's a lot easier. But at some point, you know, those of us who are a little bit older have learned that it's good to come up through the other way before the new way is taught, because you really have an appreciation for your art. Is that how you feel?
I appreciate it, but the thing is, I couldn't afford it or have the time or the space, you know, for a real dark room, having all these chemicals and things that you had to have.
Right.
I mean, you know, to enlarge a photograph, you have to have another camera that takes pictures of your picture, and, you know, and to dodge and burn certain things, you need certain chemicals. Dodging and burning is lightening of certain parts of the photograph, and burning is darkening certain parts, you know. Like you want to bring out the shadows a little bit more, you dodge.
So that was
the
old Photoshop, sort of.
Well, with chemicals.
Yeah, with chemicals,
right.
yeah. And now you have this way of doing it.
Yeah,
So.
and Photoshop is very powerful.
Absolutely. Look
and
at this. This is absolutely extraordinary. The color reminds me of those commercials, those Kodak commercials.
But the main thing is still, you know, you want to get it right the first time. You want to know what you're doing. You want to get the exposure right. You want to get the composition right and everything. That way you have less work to do in Photoshop, and you can go out and take more pictures.
Well, that's, yeah. It's like editing anything. You want to make sure that the initial subject matter is really solid
so
there.
You still need to know what you're doing if you want to get anywhere or make something really good.
Now, I noticed that you have somewhat of a studio set up. Do you mind if we take a look at it?
Not at all. It's just a little small thing that I got going on in there.
We're going to
experimentation.
take a little walk over there, take a short break. We're going to go to Paul's little micro version of a studio.
Right, micro
right after
version.
this brief message. So what gave you the idea to do that? In case you have just tuned in, you're watching Art Beat, and my guest is Paul Dillon, and no, he's not going to be shooting me today. He's actually going to be shooting some pictures of another nut, or several nuts, actually,
just
right?
An everyday object.
Everyday objects. And so let us see the master at work here.
Okay.
So.
What I'm trying to do here is, you see these things, first off, with a macro lens, at a distance about this far, you have a depth of field of about 1/4 of an inch. So I'll take a photograph. I can take a photograph and focus on this, but this will be out of focus and the front will be out of focus. So what I'll do is I'll take this in focus, take another one with this in focus, take another one a little farther back in focus, and maybe one more in focus in the back, and I'll be able to combine all those together and bring them all in focus in Photoshop. What was I talking about?
So they're combined in Photoshop into one photograph.
Right. Because of the macro lens. Now, the reason I use the macro lens, because I can get a complete sharp image on every, let's see, it's about 4 inches deep. Everything in there will be perfectly in focus.
Well, I love the composition of what you've set up there.
It's an everyday thing. And, you know, I kind of, you know, use this for experimentation and things like that. But what I do is, you know, and also I'm starting to venture into studio lighting instead of just using available light. Available lights like sunshine, whatever's coming through the window, and, you know, and flash. But this is studio lighting right here. So I'll put this on manual focus. Now I'm not going to touch the camera when I push the trigger because I don't want to shake the camera. So I got a cable release. Got to have that. So I'll just take a
Set your shot up, right? That's what you're doing.
Right. I'm going to focus on the front part of the
And the lighting that you're using is special lighting?
Yep, it's 35 watts going through this diffuser right here onto a plain colored background, which I could change the color of that also.
Right, so what, I mean, the blue though sets it off very nicely, but you may change the blue in Photoshop.
I could change it to red or something, you know, a different color. And then I would just refocus, go down here, go a little deeper into the frame, put another 1/4 inch, take another picture, keep going on and on and on.
So I'm looking at exactly what you said here.
Yes, you're looking at the exact
You know, it
same.
almost looks like a flower. It's so beautiful.
You know,
wow.
And it could be something I could use as a background. You know, I could change the opacity of it and put something over the top of it. Like some people working, you know, they're using screws and bolts and things like that. You know, there's so much you can do. It's just about endless.
Well, it's something, it's the common man's art, not to be condescending in any way, but I'm saying it's something that people can actually understand because it's an everyday object, something that they use, and yet it has an artistic composition to it thanks to the way you've set up your shot. Right. So what other objects flow through your mind as an artist when you're thinking of doing this?
I see things laying around all the time.
I bet you
want
do.
to photograph. Like, okay, this is kind of a strange
Perfect.
thing, but I found this jawbone of a pelican. Now I plan on taking some photographs of that and see how it turns out.
It almost looks like petrified wood. It
It does. I thought it was
different
wood when I
kinds
first saw it until I picked it up and I saw the teeth.
Well, Paul,
So-
very quickly, before we
Yeah.
bid farewell to our audience, what kind of advice would you give to those out there who are so enamored of photography but don't know where to start?
First thing you want to do is first research. Get your research, talk to a photographer, see what is a good thing to start with. Something that you can use for a long time. You don't want to get, point and shoots are fine, but they're not going to get you into the edible type of photography that you can use in Photoshop. This is another thing you have to learn, in my opinion. There's a format to shoot. You have to shoot in a raw image. A raw image has all the information in it. Now, a point and shoot will only shoot most of them in JPEG. Most of the information is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you blew out the highlights or got it too dark with a point and shoot, you're not going to get it back. It's gone forever. But if you shoot in a raw format and bring it into Photoshop and use camera raw editing, you can get those highlights back or tone down that thing and bring this thing up.
Well,
and just make it a real thing.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's just like anything else that we've done here on Artbeat. We're learning that the artist urges those of you out there who are interested in the art form to practice.
And practice and practice and practice.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad I got to keep my promise to you about coming and visiting you.
I'm glad you did, Lane.
Yeah, and I love looking at the.
I miss you.
I know. I miss being with your art around me all the time. But we have some wonderful artists on this coast, and we want you to let us know if there are any that you would like us to put on Artbeat. So do email us at wkfk.com or give me a call at the IP 523-8516. Let me know if you want to put someone on that you enjoy their art form, and we will do so. So thanks, Paul, for joining us. Our guest today has been Paul Dillon. We hope you watch Artbeat again next week.